Getting ready for our YouTube watchers. There we go, got that going. And just like that, we are live, Triple T number 63, March 14th, 2023. Who would have thunk it? So glad you guys could show up, and shout out to people watching on YouTube and those of you watching the recordings. I truly appreciate it. As with all of the YouTube stuff, if you would hit the subscribe button and ring the bell and please leave me some comments, I would really appreciate it. My name is TJ Zebel. I lovingly call myself a professional problem solver. And if you're not sure what that is, I offer a free 30-minute consult. We can discuss it, see if there's anything that I can do for you, help you out with, questions I can walk you through. Being a professional problem solver doesn't mean I have all the answers. It means that I have learned many different ways to help you along figuring out answers for yourself, where to look for them, who to talk to. My website is theTSWB.com, the tall, skinny white boy.com, in case there's any confusion about what TSWB actually stands for. Yes, tall, skinny white boy. And there, we got all that homework done. Just like that, I must be getting better at it. Only took me a little over a minute. Yeah. 63 episodes, and I'm starting to get used to this. For those of you that are here for the first time, or if you're watching the recording for the first time, I've set this up as a 2-hour meeting. The first hour, I've got a couple of topics picked out, and I will present them and present my understanding of them and ask for ideas and thoughts on it. The second hour is open mic, open platform, and anybody on the call can present questions, and I also let anybody on the call provide their answers. That way I can learn as well. And if you have any questions that you've thought of in the last time that you were on here, you can type them into the chat now, so that when we get to that second hour, we don't have to play the polite squirrels. If any of you remember that cartoon, no, after you, no, serious, after you, no, after you, really, after you, and then a minute and a half later, somebody starts and everybody, okay, you get the idea. So, any stories, comments, epiphanies, ahas from last week's episode that anybody would like to share before we dig into this week's topics?
I was way back, not too far back. I actually went back to one of them to listen again about softeners. So thank you for labeling them.
What was your takeaway from rewatching the softeners episode?
Just finding different ways to, some of the clients that I have truly don't know how to initiate a conversation, and how natural it is for, I think, people who grew up in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. It's just very natural. And because of technology, it's created this unnatural moment where people don't know how to greet each other and they don't know how to initiate a conversation. So it's really helpful for them to I literally created a guideline of say this, here's your softeners, here's your 3 awesome questions, here's your encouragement question, here are your encouragement comments. So it was really, really helpful for them to have it laid out in one clean place.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Super proud of you.
Thank you for all your knowledge.
Hey, Mo, thanks for checking in. See, Guada checked in as well. Anybody else want to share before we deep dive into all of our fun topics for the week. Bueller. All right. Well, the topics that I came up with this week: energy vampires, push-pull dating, and 3 brains. And I know somewhere out there, somebody just took 3 brains and went lizard on me and went, 3 brains. So that's why that one will be last. Let's get to energy vampires. Those of us that have been around this industry for a while, we know the importance of energy, protecting our energy, noticing the energy in others, energy around us. And I came across this topic Monday. I was running my errands and decided to stop in to a new restaurant, check it out. And anybody that's been around the restaurant industry knows that when you open up a new place and you've got new staff and new equipment and new menu and da, it can get a little on the hectic side. And I've done bar and restaurant consultation. Actually, my only college degree is in hotel, restaurant, and bar management. Go figure, right? And so I've been a bar manager and bartender and all the above. And so I was watching these guys, and there was one lady, I didn't get a chance to verify, but I'm pretty sure she was like assistant manager, guessing in her mid-30s by some of the facial reading that I did. And she was hustling, rocking it, having at it, and trying to keep the younger, less experienced, much less motivated staff going. And I was going to congratulate her and tell her I thought she was doing a great job she had great hustle energy. I mean, this lady she was moving it. And then Mrs. Cratchit showed up. And if you recognize if you recognize that reference, she had the frumpy old librarian. Anybody that knows the Chinese facial reading, massive forehead, not much chin, probably a shawl that she knitted while complaining about the neighbor kids being too loud. And she got up, and in this, it's a Mexican restaurant, and it's like a fast food restaurant with a bar in it, and they actually bring the food to the table. And as I mentioned, it's a newer place, so the lady I was talking about is running her butt off, and all of a sudden Mrs. Cratchit gets up and throws a fit because she ordered like 5 minutes ago, and where's my food? And they got theirs first. And the lady had just set down her plate for a table that ordered like right before her and said, yeah, your one item is right here. And smile, kept it all professional. I was like, you go, girl. And so she sets Mrs. Cratchit's plate down. I ordered more than this. Well, another kid is bringing out another platter. Mrs. Cratchit's sitting at a table for 4 and ended up covering up half the table with her food. And so she's sitting there, and then there wasn't enough salsa. And so the assistant manager, I'm just going to call her, hustles, brings her out another one. And as she's walking away, the assistant manager tripped on a chair and bam, straight to the tile floor. And this place is one of those open, everything is hard. So it's super noisy. And the whole place went, and I watched this woman's energy. And she was on the floor for a little while. I could, it hurt. I don't care if you're a linebacker. She went down hard. I watched it. And she gets up and I'm fine. And, you know, trying to put on game face and heads back and still brought out Mrs. Cratchit's last plate. And Mrs. Cratchit is like, you should watch where you're going. Like, and the assistant manager's like, it happens. It's happened to me before. And I'm like, don't make excuses, my friend. I was waiting for her to come back out. She stayed back in the kitchen. I saw her one time after that. She just popped out a little, and I just wanted to congratulate her. But I also felt so bad that in that little instant, she had been burning so many SRUs, self-regulating units, that Mrs. Cratchit had the ability to liquidate what was left. And I bring this up especially for us who have to help people get through certain things and deal with energy shifts throughout their day, events like that. And I wanted to ask you guys, out of curiosity, in a moment like that, what might you do, or if you were one of the coworkers, what might you tell the assistant manager to help reframe it and try and get her back on track so she can get through the rest of her day? Anybody?
I'll jump in for a second. What came first to my mind was actually not what to tell her. I think when I've been in that situation, the first thing I would do is just get rapport and then try to siphon off some of that energy so she knows she's not alone and help her reestablish her state control. There's probably something really great to tell her, but that goes under the radar and doesn't escalate anything.
Great answer. Thanks for sharing. Anybody else?
I think probably what I would do is reframe it and get her back to present to what's important to her and why she wants to do that job and why she's there.
That was a great answer. Thanks for sharing. Who else got something for me?
You said a reframe?
If reframe or anything that if you had witnessed that, you were a coworker or something, and you could talk to her, what might you do to help her?
I would pace and lead starting. Probably go into the same state that she's in and then pace and lead her out of it.
Awesome.
Other than that, like a sphere of influence or like some sort of claw, rapport, technique. And that's basically it, yeah.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for sharing. Well, that leaves you two.
First thing I would do is help her back up, but also just pull her aside, let her know she's not alone, encourage her to go take a break and then go see if I can navigate from there. But to definitely get her out of the situation so that she could breathe.
And you hit on something very important. Breathing is the key aspect of changing the state.
You got anything to toss in there, Rob?
I wouldn't have been there. I don't like Mexican.
I've been in her position a number of times, especially in the hospitality industry. I think everybody should have to work in the hospitality industry at least 1 year, should serve in the military for at least 1 year or two, just to get a little idea of what people are like. And one of the things I wanted to do was tell her that first, I'm concerned, did anything other than your ego get hurt? Are you okay? Second of all, before that happened, I was trying to track you down. You were moving way too fast for me to tell you I was amazed and am super impressed with your hustle energy. You're out working these kids 30-1. I can hardly wait till the kids catch on to your energy. And fourth, Mrs. Cratchit, I think, is angry 23.9%, or 23.9 hours out of the day. So if you want to, give yourself a 2-minute timeout, go in the cooler and scream just once. Let that energy out, and then come back out and realize she's the one with the problem, and don't let her steal your energy. I'll keep this as PC as possible because we do have YouTube and it will be a recording. But I've used this with a couple of clients that opinions are like buttholes. Everybody has one. Some are stinkier than others. Some are still covered in feces because they have no idea. And if they shat in your direction, it is not your feces. Don't allow a dirty butthole to stink up your day. Yes, that's right. I went straight for the lizard. For those of you that don't know what that reference means, stick around. You'll figure it out. But watching that, after Miss Cratchit finished her, oh, go ahead, Lenore. I saw this hand. I remember the rest of the story. Your mic's off.
I was only talking for like 20 minutes. It's fine.
Yeah.
I always find it really interesting when people say the world is a reflection of what you're putting out, what your attitude is and your mindset. So when I bump into people like that, I like to consider them pop quizzes from the universe, as in, how are your tools and techniques going? How are you applying stuff? And literally seeing if you can manage in that state, and how efficient are you at staying in the state that you want? How efficient are you at navigating through those situations? So in case anyone's like, well, that's not what it's reflecting back to me, just look at it as a pop quiz.
Awesome.
Just being tested.
Thanks for sharing that. Now, I kept an eye on Mrs. Cratchit. So she finished. Oh, Rob, go ahead.
I was just giving approval to Lenora.
Oh,
That's
okay. So I was watching Mrs. Cratchit. So she finishes her table of food. And then she gets up, and this is a bus your own table type stuff. Left everything on the table. And then she notices there was a table of two other elderly ladies that I also noticed, who were having a fun-loving, laughing type little conversation. And Mrs. Cratchit went over and crashed the table, kind of like in a way of, hi. You couldn't even say hi. And I'm like, well, They probably didn't want to, and sat herself down and jumped into the conversation. And I watched the conversation, and you could tell without hearing it that it went from fun loving and laughing to complaining about, the sun came up too early and the clouds, and then we needed the rain, but we didn't need that much rain, and it should have been a little more, but a little bit less, and it should have been during the night instead of during the day, and there was too much oxygen this one day, and then somebody came by and they burped, and it was broccoli and and I watched this lady, this energy vampire, take 3 people and pull their day into a dark cloud. And I went, wow, how sad. Because she obviously has a ton of energy. If she could replace that energy with light, with the amount of energy she's controlling, she could have lit up the whole room. And then I got to thinking, as I was driving home and thinking about this, as I do, I wondered if I would have even had the amount of ability to turn Miss Cratchit around. Or what it would take. She kind of struck me as one of those people that if you walked up and gave her a bar of gold, she'd be like, gold? I'm more of a silver person. I mean, gold doesn't go with anything I go with. How am I going to buy groceries with a bar of gold? I mean, this thing is so heavy. Do you know what my shoulders can't handle this type of weight? And then she wonders why somebody goes, fine, give it back. And they smack her on the head with it. No, she didn't get smacked. Nobody got hurt. Stop typing. It's just a story. But those of us that have to live in the human experience around humans in their natural environment have to be ready for these type of people and have to be careful and cognizant of our own energy, because they are out there. And the worst ones are if they're family, because then you're really not allowed to shoot them. Mom and dad are like, we've got so much invested, leave him alone. I'm like, just saying. But you know what I mean. And so we learn things like reframes, meditation, color breathing. As it was mentioned, paying careful attention to our breathing. Learning areas where we can, jump into a cooler and scream, or whatever works. Anybody got any input, ahas, epiphanies, things they'd like to share about that before we shift gears? Yes, Lenore.
I try to do my best. And the reason I say I try to do my best is because some days I'm better at it than others. And you can go into the situation with the best intention. And if you feel like that they've completely sucked your energy and it throws you into a bad mood, to simply consider it a learning experience, and you gain something from that experience. And when you're in that place where somebody is a bit harsh and they're bumping up against a lot of your standards and boundaries, to do the best that you can to accept them as they are. And time is on your side. And soon this will pass. And to do what you can to minimize the impact of it. And this came to me the other day, literally like the word aftercare after having a harsh interaction, because I feel like, at least for people who are empathic or just incredibly sensitive to those situations, you have to find ways to specifically raise your vibration. And it's not just hop back into it. You literally have to break out the tools and get yourself to stop the momentum of what you picked up. Find a way to stop the momentum, clean it up, your energy as much as possible, so that you can get back to a better feeling state. I call it aftercare, but I also call it like an energy burn, like where it just has to keep going and somehow burning off. So that way you can then get back to your fun-loving state.
Yes. Rob.
It's a natural thing that I do, but I tend to immediately disassociate myself from the event, and I have my disassociated self involved in the interaction, and I'm away from that, just looking on and thinking, this is going interestingly. And then once it's all gone past, I just reintegrate and says, oh, that was a fun movie. So there's no aftershock. It's just simply.
That is awesome.
That is a great one.
Thanks for sharing that, because I had a squirrel show bring me a little deal while Lenora was talking about, there are some people that are, I call them toxic lightning. And they show up and they've got to get it off their shoulders, and they don't care who takes it. They're just like, and they slam this energy on you, and they'll call you names and whatever. And then they're fine. They're like, oh, I feel better. And then they don't understand what they just threw on the other person. And you get people like me that'll sit there for the next 5 days and rehearse all the different things, all the different ways I could have handled it, all the things I could have said. And one of my buddies put it perfectly. He said, it's like rehearsing lines for a play that you're never going to act in. The show's been shut down. The show will never happen, but you're rehearsing all these lines for the show anyway. And it takes just as much energy to do that. And I've got a buddy like this. I adore him, but there are times I can't take his call because I don't know which one I'm going to get, if I'm going to get Jekyll or Hyde. And I don't have the energy to deal with Hyde right now. One of the things that I've taught some of my clients who have people like this is this motion. And I know that some of you know what this is. And for those of you that don't, when you're confronted with somebody like this, you pull up your hands and you look at your hands and you look at them and you look at your hands and you go, and I'm going to keep this PC, but wow, look, I have no stuff to give you. Rhymes with foxes. I have no foxes to give you. Don't get me wrong. I've got plenty of foxes to give. You foxes with my family, I will foxes you up. But for this interaction, there's nothing in the budget for you. I have nothing to give you. Have a nice day and walk away. And one of my clients works at a machinery shop, a very large one. And he said, there's one guy one guy that pushes his buttons, knows exactly where those buttons is, loves to put one of those guys. He said 3 days after our session, he bumped into this guy in one of the areas, and he's like, and the guy was in the mood to pick and came up and started picking and pushing the buttons. And he said, I could feel the anger starting to rise up. And all of a sudden he remembered what I said. And he looked at the guy and he goes, and walked away. As he's walking down to the corner, they had those mirrors up for the forklift, for the corners because of the forklifts in the shop. And he said he looked up and the guy's sitting there going, what just happened? How did I? And the guy said, yeah, it took all he could to get around the corner before he started chuckling. And he said he walked all the way back to his workspace doing this, going, that's right. No foxes to give. No foxes for him.
Great anchor.
Huh?
Great anchor.
So there's that as well. Anybody got anything on that before we change gears?
Well,
I'll jump in. Oh, go ahead.
I think it's just a really good opportunity to stay control.
To what?
It's a really good opportunity to practice state control.
Yes. State control. Thank you. Appreciate that. Holly?
Also, I had kind of a dark thought come across my mind, but it's a good reframe. I just kind of had the thought of, if you were to go back in time, and whether it was Jeffrey Dahmer or Ted Bundy, would you ever be the person that, if you don't know the end of the story, is sitting outside saying, oh, why didn't that guy want me? And maybe sometimes you don't want the other person to want you. You don't want to have a good relationship. Sometimes the best thing to know is, hey, this jerk, I got them to get out of my life, and that was the best thing ever. And like I said, not that I'm trying to disparage any of their victims or anything, but it's just kind of an interesting reframe on it.
Exactly. All right, we're ready for the next one. Push-pull dating. Anybody ever heard of this phrase before? I came up with this after I realized that I had been in a number of relationships, and the common denominator with the issue was, me. And I found the more I describe it, the more people recognize it. And what I did was I always had to keep my girlfriend's arm's length distance away. And the way I put it with one relationship client that I'm working with, it's like if you take a bullseye, 10 is the outside, and bullseye is wedding, marriage. I always like to keep my girlfriends right around ring number 3. And if they got into ring 2, is like, they're getting a little, but if they started going away, I'm like, oh no, baby, come back. Hey, 4, you don't have to be out at 4. Come on, 3, right? But anybody who's been in relationships and felt level 3, where you don't have that commitment, but you don't have freedom, and you're always in that limbo. And like they say, if somebody asks you what your relationship status is and you have to think for a little bit, you're in 3 or 4. And I've had to teach this to a number of my clients who were on both ends, both sides of that spectrum. And it's interesting when you start looking at the dynamics. that's where you have to start digging down and figuring out why is it, what's the cause, what's going on. And for a number of my clients that I've worked with, of course, it goes back to younger events, shall we say. And our younger selves didn't realize that we made it through, that we survived. You know, what if we get dumped again? What if dream person shows up right after I've committed myself to, you know, what if the queen shows up, but I've committed myself to a 9 because all I could find was 4s and 5s? And you have to work your way through that. That's part of my wait to date protocol with my relationship clients, is having them take a year off to work on themselves, work on their values and criteria. And what I'm finding more and more and more is a lot of them are having troubles in the dating field, especially those that are, you know, I don't get too many clients in their early 20s for relationship issues, because they're still playing the field. Mine are in their mid to late 30s and up. And the ones that are really starting to freak out are the ladies in the mid to late 30s, early 40s that want to start a family. Because the time is ticking, not getting any younger. They don't want to be 70 when their kid graduates. So we start working on this stuff. And of course, when I tell them they need to take a year off from being in a committed relationship, may sound a little sadistic, but I do enjoy dropping that on them just for the reaction. They're like, whoa, wait. I come to you because I haven't been able to get a date, and now you're telling me I got to wait another year? Like, yeah, another year. Because oftentimes what I'm finding is the values and criteria that they have been using for dating were set in place in their teens. And now they're in their late 30s and can't figure out why they're getting the same jerk in a different meat suit. And we go through and I've got a whole protocol that I put them through. And I have 4 clients right now that are having massive breakthroughs. Like, oh my gosh. And they're like, I got one, she's texting me like, oh my God. Oh! And I'm like, and the funny part is, one of her biggest breakthroughs was given to her because she, in her 2nd month, thought she had met her king. And instead of telling her king that he has 10 months to wait till they can be in a relationship, they dove in right away. We decided we're going to be in a committed relationship. Oh, he thought. That took about 7 days for him to start showing the other parts that weren't kingly. And it really threw her for a loop. And it hurt some of her younger selves that did the same thing they always do. And with us working together, she was able to go in and inspect. And now she's at the point where she understands this is the time. This 1 year is 365 days of experimenting, paying close attention, testing, and evaluating her values and criteria. How is she reacting to every man that she's around? Married, single, younger, older. What is it about them that she notices, and why is it important? And she's also finding out that she gets to experiment with who she really wants to be, because that's who's going to attract the king that she's looking for. And so I have them write out a journal of everything that they can think of, describe about their person. And it gets updated and changed, and it grows throughout the year. But it also has them looking at it and, am I a fit? Am I the queen for this king? What can I work on? What can I improve? What can I do better so that I can match what I'm expecting? And one of my other clients found out that she found what she thought was to be her match, and then realized that his religion doesn't allow most of the foods that she likes. And she had to step back and reevaluate values and criteria. How important are these foods to me? And for them to be married, she would have to switch religions. And I said, well, that's why you do this year of learning the trifecta, Echo Talk, 3 Magic Questions, values and criteria, so that you have the ability to start seeing more than just a studly face with cool things. And one of my other clients, because of this, allowed herself to be more vulnerable with an older gentleman that she met at a bar that she's allowed herself to enjoy being herself in. And her and this older gentleman have become such good friends that she realized last week. He has shown her what her dad should have been like, could have been like, would have been like, and decided this is who she's going to tell herself her dad is like. Because she can't change the past, but she can enjoy the present and the future. And they just absolutely adore each other on a fully platonic level and watch out for each other. And she said she never understood what that felt like until the last couple of weeks. So, yeah. Any input, ahas, epiphanies, comments on that one? Feeler. All right, well, with the staff that I see on my screen right now, this next one will be, I was gonna say a no-brainer. 3 brains.
Ba-dum-bum.
Who can tell me what the 3 brains are?
The head, the heart, the stomach, the intestines.
Awesome response. And I know that somebody out there just went, but those of us that are in the industry know it to be true enough to be true. And I've had a number of people question me on this, and my favorite response is, well, you've heard the phrase follow your gut, right? Yes, your gut brain. And I've been teaching my clients this, and it's amazing. The more in tune, the more they accept the concept of the three brains, the more in tune they become with listening to them separately, not as the head brain listening to the heart, but as the entity of themselves listening to their heart separate from their brain. And that was a concept that took me a little bit of time to wrap around, because when I had pictured it, to me it was, well, my head brain is listening to my heart brain, or it's listening to my gut brain. But that doesn't disassociate me from my head brain, because sometimes up here, conscious and subconscious are screaming and yelling and fighting and arguing so well and trying to decide whether the heart brain is right or not, that I can't get an answer, a correct answer, because I'm trying to let my head brain decipher before it told me what it thought was the answer. And I had to step back and go, wait a minute. What if I just told my conscious and unconscious to stay out of this for a little bit and ask my heart or my gut, what are you trying to tell me? What are you telling me? And you'd be amazed how that unfiltered information shows up, especially when you start going back and playing recordings from your past, where your conscious or your subconscious had full control. They thought they knew the answer. They were like, yeah, well, the heart said, but what the hell do they know? So we just told you what we thought. And you rewind the tape and dive down in there and go, what were you trying to tell me? And the heart's like, I told those guys to do this because it's the right thing to do. And your head brain is like, well, we did the best we could. We're still right. We're going to stand by it. Then you ask the gut, what did you think? And the gut said, the heart and I had a little discussion and we agreed. That's why I was trying my hardest to tell you to go for it. And that's where we get the expression, oh, I should have followed my gut. Or I should have followed my heart. And so my boil down on this is not only for ourselves, but for our clients, help them understand the difference in the three as different from the person. so that you can allow the three to make decisions separate from each other. And then you can have a discussion with the three and you can make the decision. Anybody got any input on that?
I got just some kind of random two things that popped into my head. One is just kind of an observation of, as you were saying that, you know how we talk about that in the body, we have like a microcosm within the macrocosm kind of thing, that you can read the whole body from the face, you can treat the whole body from the ear, you know, that sort of thing. And I just kind of thought in the brain, there's kind of this same thing happening in the amygdala, the neocortex, and the limbic system, that you've got the three brains within the literal brain. So anyway, just kind of a side note.
Right.
And I had another point that I was going to make, but it just popped out of my head. Oh, I remember. Also, sometimes we try to talk about parts therapy, and you try to have somebody do the wrong, some part of you is trying to do the wrong task, and there might be somebody better to do it. And I think a lot of times that happens with our three brains as well. So anyway, yeah, go ahead.
Awesome. Great stuff. Thanks for sharing.
I love that Holly pointed out parts, because I wrote down parts too, because I think especially, so now adding fun to the mix, for anybody who is starting this and happens to come across this video, it is, I think it's an art to learning to listen to yourself and learning to be guided on the intuition and the information that your mind and body are giving to you. And I also think that the culture will separate the mind and the body, but they are one. And just even as you're listing them together, they are one, proving even more so that you are one and everything's connected when it comes to parts. And then also when it comes to those three brains, and then which actress, in my case, or which actor is talking at the moment, it can get really interesting really quickly. So if it's a big decision, definitely, I would recommend having somebody else there to help guide you rather than just kind of diving in on your own and seeing what comes out of this. Perhaps a pen and paper might be of use also, but there's so many different components, because your heart can be a different age at the time, your gut can be a different age at the time, your head could be a different age at the time, and they're all trying to help you navigate. And I'll even go as far as to bring in another person who whether it's my higher self or somebody else that may have a different perspective, to also help bring in the information that I might be needing at that time. But I love the three combinations.
And a squirrel just delivered this when you were saying that. It's three different writers for the script that's happening. And if you think of it that way, what kind of script is the brain going to write? And what kind of script is the heart going to write? What kind of script would the gut write? And sometimes they're all kind of like on the same page and they're like, eh. And other times it's like Frankenstein meets Love Notes, the Notebook versus, and you're like, what? Come on.
Completely, especially if they're coming in with their wounding and their difficulties. Oh my God, completely.
Yes.
When you were talking about that, Lenore, the thing that came to my mind, the scroll that ran, was the 3-chair protocol, which would work really well with that.
Yeah.
Awesome call, Mo.
Who we putting in the hot seat?
Yeah. One of the things I'd like to ask you, TJ, or anybody, is which one should you be listening to the most, and which one should you probably be listening to the least?
You're gonna hate my answer. Lenora already knows.
I was
the
not
answer.
on mute for that.
What?
I was not on mute for that.
What's the answer, Lenora?
It depends.
It depends.
I'm with you, Mo. I like my concrete answers. I like very clear, defined information. But unfortunately, even when you said that, I was like, oh, no, no, it depends.
Especially people with this type of hairline where you're just like, well, it could be, but if we got this, and then if this scenario, but if this showed up, and then if this, yes, the answer is yes, maybe, depends, yeah.
One of the things that I really like to, especially like in the 3 brain scenario or an A scenario, is I always like to really emphasize to people is that I compare myself to a computer, right? And when you're doing that, just because there's a problem or something's not working right, maybe it's the program. Maybe it's not necessarily the computer that has the problem.
Yeah.
So having that separation. So there's an operating system and then there's the computer. And all your 3 components, your 3 brains, are all part of that operating system. They're not you.
Yeah.
You're the computer. And really having that distinction.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because oftentimes I will tell people, when we get started, you are not broken. It's just like a computer that has a bad program on it or a virus or something. The computer still works. It's just having some issues. And so we are going to get in there. We're going to figure out who put the program on the hard drive. Is it, something that we need, something that we want? Are there any updates? And we'll go in and tackle it. Yes, Lenore.
Mo, when you said the 3-chair protocol, so in my head, when you said that, the brain was in one, the gut was in one, and the heart was in another. And a couple of weeks ago, Holly mentioned about when you're in 3-chair, if a resolution can't be found, in the example that she gave was who can come in to reconcile the situation and having somebody else come in. So in this case, bringing in your higher self or a guardian of some sort, a protector of some sort, whomever else you might need in that moment to come into that situation to help give you a more cohesive answer if the 3 can't come to an agreement. So just a thought.
No, that's a very powerful scenario. It's kind of like the referee or the judge in the court case.
Well, also when you brought up 3-chair and envisioning the heart, the gut, the brain in that 3-chair scenario, having them do a full rotation twice so that each one gets to argue back and forth at each other while one is observing, and then they switch. So they all get a chance to argue with each other. They all get a chance to observe the other ones argue with each other so that they get a really good feel for where everybody's angle on the situation. Which ironically, with my corporate coaching, I've had a couple of my clients have mastermind calls for their company, but it was under the pretext that they had to have one representative, boots on the ground, bottom level employee present, with the understanding that their opinion was the most important on the call. They weren't just there for listening. And it's the feedback that I got from that was so funny, because they're like, oh my gosh, and I tell them it can't be a mastermind of just finance. You have to have, yes, it's going to take a couple hours more than you anticipate, but trust me, the information you will glean from it will blow your mind. And of course, the first time I did it, I'm like, I hope. But I knew from being boots on the ground in a couple of the corporates that I worked for, the stuff that they handed down from the top, I'm like, these people have no idea what's happening on the ground. None, or they would never do this. And that's why I had these guys do this. And like I say, the feedback, they were like, oh my gosh, we had this idea that we came up with in the boardroom. And so we thought we'd bring it out. And all of a sudden it was the boots on the ground that were going, well, no, it won't work because of this. And then HR is like, well, yeah, but it won't work because of this. And finance is like, well, we don't even have a budget set up for that. And they're like, well, yeah, you guys designed it, sitting in the glass boardroom up in the penthouse and have no idea what's happening on the ground. And sometimes I think it's the same thing with what we're doing here. Conscious and subconscious are like, hey, this is a great idea. And they never think to ask the heart or the gut what they think about it. Until afterwards, then everybody's fighting and, well, no, you said we shall be of course. So, Holly?
And hopefully you finish your thought. Just this is similar to what TJ was saying, but the first thing that came to my mind too is just, I feel like if all three brains feel like they've had a chance to get their say, I think the biggest problem is especially the conscious mind. Maybe for some people it's more the heart, but the conscious mind just discounts the gut and doesn't even listen to it in the first place. And I've had times where, if I can get all three working together and they respect each other and they all three feel heard, if my gut's telling me something that doesn't make sense to my brain, as long as my brain got to talk to the gut and say, this is why I think different, it's willing to fall in line. Where other times where the gut will say, brain, you make a good point. I didn't think of that. Let's actually go that way. So it's more just making sure everybody gets heard and everybody gets to be part of the conversation and finding what part of you do you shut down the most and make sure it gets a voice and feels respected and heard.
Yeah. And that took us right through our first hour. So now we are in hour number 2, which means that it's up to you guys to bring forth questions and topics and things that you would like worked on. And everybody on the call gets to chime in and help us out. And Rob, you got something for us? You're on mute.
Now,
There we go.
I have joined a network event, which I'd like a little bit of help with, in the sense that I am in the Australian Capital Territory and I'm going to a diplomatic business connections event,
Okay.
which is if you're exporting or thinking about accessing overseas markets and building a relationship with senior officials from the diplomatic community, including Australian key trading partners and a range of other countries, come along and enjoy it. And what can I introduce to all of these different embassies, the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, the Trade Start, where you can meet people who can address all these questions, but I don't know what I can offer and what I can particularly bring to the table.
Rules for the second hour. Everybody else gets to go first. So who's got something for Rob? And welcome, Elijah. Good to see you back on here, buddy.
Sorry I'm late. I didn't realize you guys put your clocks forward already.
Oh, yeah, don't get us started on daylight saving scam.
Yeah, hours don't go forward until 26. So
Yep.
we have a couple of weeks where we're closer to you by an hour, I didn't fully hear Rob's question, but I got the very end of it. And my first instinctive answer is, will you bring you? Right? Whatever, whether it's a way of communicating or a way of connecting or a way of making people feel at ease or whatever it is that you do, Rob, because I've seen you in several meetups several times. You know, you bring a very uniqueness to all of them and all the experiences I've had with you. So I think you have plenty to offer, but I'm still a bit unsure about the context of the question because I only caught the last few words.
I want to monetize it, not just, I don't want to just spend a few hours chatting people up and giving them a good feel. I want to find out what I can monetize with all of these high level people, because these are the pick of the society. These are the brightest sparks of the diplomatic community and the social service, governmental service people. And so...
do you know what it is they want that you can offer?
Not yet. That will be happening in the smoozing.
Right. So we need, I say we, I mean you, but I'm going to say we need to find out what the other person wants, right? As a general strategy, you find out what the other person wants, and then you show them how what you're offering will help them get that. And by going through you and your service and the unique skill set that you bring to the table, they will get the thing that they want. And it's very easy at that point to have them say, yes, please, because they want what they want.
Yeah.
And if getting it is going through your skill set, then, well, you can't really put a price on that, can you? Especially if they have plenty of resources.
Yes. Only taken me 20 years to get here.
Hello, Florence.
Hi, Florence. I love that she's got a turtle in her hand. Rob, awesome question. And I completely agree with Elijah. Find out what they want, especially because you know the mechanics of how to get them what they want. So now all you simply have to do is find out the keywords that they're using and tailor how you can be the solution for their problem using their keywords.
Thank you.
I'll add to that too. I love what everybody's saying. Beforehand, you might also want to experiment with pulling up the avatar of the ideal person at that conference that you're going to talk to, and just elicit the avatar's criteria and values. But on the flip side too, I'll also say this: keep in mind that you want to be doing something you enjoy. So maybe the thing they want isn't a good fit. So take a moment and also elicit your own criteria and values. What lights you up? What do you have fun doing? What kinds of service? And maybe there'll be a list, but at least then you've got, when you elicit their criteria and values, you have something to compare it in your criteria and values to find a match that you will actually enjoy too.
I got 2 weeks to do that.
Awesome. Anybody else got something for him?
I just got here again. What's the question?
Rob has a international webinar coming up, and he's trying to figure out how he can.
No, it's a person-to-person meeting.
Oh, person-to-person meeting. Awesome, even better.
Even better. What's the question? I love. I want to provide some feedback.
Go ahead, Rob.
I'm going to a networking event which includes high-level embassy people, high-level governmental people, all in relation to trade, how to introduce and get trade working from Australia to the world and back from the world to Australia. So what can I introduce to give to these people from my services so I can monetize that?
It's a great question. I would say a form of value arbitrage, which would be exchanging some form of value that you have in surplus, but they value more. And And the way to get that would be some form of elicitation. And I think, as discussed already, criteria and values elicitation, or some form of echoing to elicit some trans words and dive a bit deeper into those. So you could figure out what exactly they need and see if you could offer that.
I'm not out of my depth. These people I deal with all the time, socially. And so it's just a matter of they're just people who have a different structure of thought processes. They're all into significance. They're all into authority. There's absolutely no pity associated with them. There is no sense of confidence. They know. If they want to be training spies, I can help them with that, but they've got their own people to do that.
So, Rob, you actually said the magic word just now, structure. Okay. If anybody, from NLP and all that kind of training and all that good jazz, that structure is much more important than content. So when you're listening to them, you kind of want to not so much pay attention to the content of what it is they're saying, but how it is that they're saying what they're saying. The structure of the communication, right? Because once you learn and notice the structure in the way people communicate, when you communicate back to them using the same structure, they will definitely listen to you because you're speaking their language. Right?
Yes, I've done a lot of training in that with Chase Hughes. So I've been enjoying very much.
Yeah. So it's like when I ask a client, what do you see? I'm not so much interested in what they see. What I'm interested is how they see what they see. They see it from above, they see it from a distance, they see it from up close, do they see it from an angle, do they see it as a silhouette, is it bright, do you know what I mean? So it's the structure of what they see rather than the content. And so if you can pay attention to the structure of the way they think and the way they speak and the way they articulate, when you mirror that back, it's going to be super, super easy for them to open up to you and give you those valuable nuggets of information that you're searching for that's going to make them want to buy whatever it is you're selling.
Elicitation is fun.
Yeah.
Especially if you can deliver it in story form. That's how I managed to get the two of my corporate clients. Was I told them a story about somebody that I had helped, a boss, that they had gotten so caught up in the minutia of the upper level that they didn't realize there wasn't a fit down below. And they're like, well, I said, well, sometimes I said, yeah, you know how it is. Have you ever been at some place and you couldn't understand how they couldn't understand why they couldn't get enough coffee cups? Well, it's simple, it's coffee cups. But there was a communication issue, and I just helped people. I talked to them, and we figured out a chain. We figured out a solution, just like that. That's what I do. They were like, "Oh, okay." And that's actually how the Mastermind call came about, and the increase in their profits from that one simple little tweak was huge. So, a little something you could throw out there.
Thank you.
Well, anybody got another question, topic that we can tackle?
I apologize that I missed our appointment, but I got it wrong with the time difference.
Oh, that's
today.
Yep, that's okay. We were just
normally it's like
we were just
normally it's 9 hours different, but now it's 8.
The joys of daylight saving scam. Holly had one. What's a good mindset to adopt when dealing with the natural problems that come in any area of your life where you are at least one standard deviation from the mean on a trait? And I'm going to let you explain that a little more in depth, Holly, so that we can.
Okay. This is something, and I never really thought about it. There was something I was listening to Jordan Peterson that made me suddenly realize this was a thing. But so a good example would be height. For example, they say that the average person, the average man in the US is 5'7" to 6'1", and I'm just picking the US because it's what I know. And the average woman is 5'2" to 5'7", for example. If you are outside of those ranges, you run into society is designed for the average person. So yeah, I'm sure this is one TJ knows quite well. And another example, of course, would be, let's say you have 6 fingers. Finding gloves is going to be a nightmare, right? And so every single person probably on planet Earth has at least one area of their life where they are outside of one standard deviation or even more standard deviations from the mean. And because society has found ways to design itself around the mean, that's always going to come with its own set of problems, but also its own set of opportunities. But one of the problems too is when you go to the doctors, if it's something that's not as visible, it might be something that they decide to try to medicate you to the mean, where it's really just, I need to learn how to design my life around. So, like there's a difference between disease versus just I'm dealing with this problem that I don't fit into a society designed for the average person. So putting it in a very graphic description, if you're too tall, theoretically, you could solve that problem by amputating your legs or something. But that probably wouldn't be the best way to handle it. So I'm just kind of wondering, obviously there's going to be, the strategies might be individual to depending on which trait is outside the mean. But I'm just kind of curious, how can you get yourself in a good mindset? Because it can be very overwhelming when you're dealing with those areas of your life. Hopefully that makes sense.
All right, kids, who's up first?
So the first thing is to reframe that you're not like an oddball, you're extraordinary because you sit outside the mean, right? And if you think about that word, extraordinary, right? That's what you are. And so once you start to notice the various advantages you have, say for example, it is a height thing, right? And you're shorter than the average, but you have a low center of gravity. So perhaps that makes you more maneuverable, right? They might be big and strong, but you're quick and nippy, right? And so start, first of all, reframing what you are as extraordinary and notice what are the advantages of being extraordinary in the way that you are. And then it's much easier to spot those opportunities that you were talking about rather than trying to, because I'm like, if you're a short person, I'm pretty sure even though the mean is the average height people, there's still plenty other short people. So a solution for a short person that would work for yourself may well be marketable and work for others who are also short. And therein lies your opportunity, right? To get something out to the market, to provide value to the market, and you will be rewarded in kind. But it starts with changing the thinking that, that somehow where you are is at a disadvantage, because it's not.
I love that. Thank you.
Who else got something? Another answer. Lenora?
I like what Elijah had said about noticing the extraordinary, noticing the uniqueness of it. I would also say solution mindset oriented, as if other things come up, especially because you've now had to have a history of navigating around certain things, notice how much you've solved. Notice how effective and efficient you have conquered these other things, and you had no idea how you were going to do it, but you did. So you're much more solution oriented than you or one may think, depending on who we're talking about, if it's just a general one. But notice how far you've come, especially when you timeline it and you see where you started. I know CJ loves to go all the way back to the womb and notice how far you truly have come in those solutions and how you've adapted and acclimated and shown in extraordinary ways how you've been able to accomplish all that you've accomplished. So this other one, you might not be overly excited about it, but no problem, because look at how far you've come the entire way.
Love that too. Thanks.
I go to genetics, that I think that I am the pinnacle of my hereditary. Everyone in the past has survived to create a child. And I am the product of that genetic whole that has created in me who I am. And so I am all the good traits that were gathered together over the generations. And so there is nothing that is a problem for me, because it may be out of the mean, but it just means that was important at some stage and it solved a problem in the past, and therefore it was regenerated in me.
It's a really cool perspective. Thank you.
I would say, to follow up on what Rob was saying, every time that you're not in the normal, look at it as something positive. Take it back to superheroes like Marvel. They're all genetic freaks, but that's what makes them extraordinary. And use those qualities and abilities that are out of the norm to help you have a different perspective, a different ability, a different quality, something that you bring to the table that nobody else has.
Awesome. I love that. Thanks.
Anybody else before I chime in? Notice the too many people consider themselves, if they don't fit into the public narrowness, to be outnumbered. But I have a fun time showing people how many numbers there are. Like, one of the things I like to do, being I'm 6'4", tall, skinny white boy, is when I find people who are vertically challenged, I enjoy going up to them and go, hey, you know something we both have in common? And, they're looking at me like, what? I said, sun visors in vehicles are worthless. Because being a short person, when you want a sun visor, you pull down the sun visor, you still want a sun visor. Being a tall person, I need a sun visor. I touch it, I can't see the road. Because vehicles are designed for that little bandwidth in the middle. There's a lot of us guys upset with the motorcycle industry. You go to any motorcycle rally, I don't feel like a monster at a motorcycle rally, and yet most of the motorcycles are designed for people who are 5'6"-ish to 5'10"-ish, maybe 5'11". Am I right, Mo?
Preach, preach. Freaking jockeys.
Yeah, and so we get on these motorcycles and they're like, oh, well, you just got to accessorize it. You just got to add another $7,000 worth of extensions and handlebars and stuff so that you fit. How about you make a frickin' motorcycle that fits us bigger guys, and one that fits the petite people? A buddy of mine's wife, 5'4", cute little thing. She wanted to ride with him, ended up having to get a V-rod, which if you don't, that thing's got some power, but it was one of the few production motorcycles that she could sit on and touch the ground. I'm intimidated by the power of the V-Rod. But she also said that the thing she liked about it, learning how to drive on it, she knew that she could get out of danger because she only weighs like 85 pounds soaking wet. That motorcycle didn't even know she's on it. So she and out of the way. But again, it goes right back to there's a whole lot of people that don't fit into that median. And for when people are like, oh, I'm the only one, I'm like, no. When I was growing up, I had size 12 feet when I was still in middle school. And the area I lived in, Minnesota, if you had feet that big, didn't matter what age you were. Here were the 3 dorky, ugly tennis shoe styles that you had to choose from. Usually they were out of sale except for the ugliest ones and the most uncomfortable ones. And everybody in class or in the school knew you couldn't get the good ones, could you? No, because they stopped at size 10. And then you look at people like Shaq, who wears a size 22. And I no longer feel so bad about having to wear cowboy boots as much as possible because cowboy boots and work boots came in sizes up to 13 at the time. So
I heard, I was watching a podcast or a YouTube video, and they were talking about fitting into the normal parameter. So this is related to a medical thing. So if you go for a test, the doctor says you fit in the normal parameters, which so if you compare that to a shoe size, like you just did, so the average shoe size is between 6 and 10, let's see. So, which is great. And if you fall into those parameters, but even if you're inside those parameters, if you're a size 9 shoe trying to put your foot in a size 6 shoe, it ain't going to be very comfortable, or vice versa. So even though you fall into those normal parameters, it still may not be the right thing to do.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Amazing.
good topic. Thanks for the question. Who's got another good topic for us to play with? Come on, I know somebody's got notebooks with like 180 questions to pick from, so. All right, 380, I was being nice.
Okay, so I have a question, and I thoughts on how to navigate it. And you mentioned it earlier, TJ, when you said you're not broken. And Mel Robbins has this quote where she goes, "No one's coming." And when you hear it at first, it's incredibly abrasive. No one's coming. No one's coming to tell you to do X, Y, and Z. And then we're also saying to people, you're not broken. How do you deliver that in a more supportive way, a more encouraging way, rather than just kind of being in your face? When somebody feels broken, they truly feel broken. And to go in and be like, you're not broken, you're just doing dumb stuff, it can be really hurtful. So how to navigate that in a more supportive way?
First thing that I do.
Oh, go ahead, Elijah.
First thing that I do is separate them. Whatever the issue is and whatever the problem is, separate them from the problem. They're not the problem. The problem is separate from them. Just like your computer with the virus, you're the computer, which has a program. The program has a virus, but the computer is not broken. It's just the operating system. And the operating system just needs an update. Your cell phones get an update on a regular basis. Every electronic device at some point worked just fine, and at some point it quit working and it needed an update so it works better. You're the same way. You just need an update to work better.
Who else?
Okay, I guess I'll jump in. So I think another thing that's really, really important that I at least sometimes forget is listen echo, listen some more, build rapport, echo some more. What I've discovered is 9 times out of 10, if you give the subconscious mind space to think without judgment and to talk without judgment, it will tell you exactly what to say that it needs to hear. It will tell you exactly how to fix it. It just needs to know it's in a safe place. So if it needs to hear you're not broken, that will come out. But if it needs to hear you are broken, and that's okay, and we're going to put back the pieces together, whatever metaphor works for that person, it will tell you what metaphor it needs to hear if you are willing to put your ego aside and say, I know the answers, and just listen and let them tell you what they need to hear. If that makes sense.
Before my squirrel runs away, if they're older or they don't really like the idea of electronics, I know we're getting into the point where they got to be pretty old now to not understand electronics. But another way that it was put to me was, when you think of a car, what's the most important part of a car? But if you don't have a transmission, well, if you don't have tires, if you don't have a steering wheel, you're not broken. You need a tune-up. You put some miles on. You picked up a few things. You just need a tune-up. And for some people that are intimidated by electronics and intimidated by computers and all the above, I did that, I just did it. It's another way, another reframe, that most people have been around vehicles long enough now to know that it ran great when I bought it new, and now I've got 180,000 miles on it, and it starts hard. Okay, you need a tune-up. It's okay. You wouldn't question a car with 180,000 miles if the mechanic came out and said, yeah, we got to replace a couple of pieces and she'll be fine. So that's my squirrel delivery.
What I would do, I would ask I would ask them, how do you know? But I mean, what everyone said so far, Maurice, Holly, and TJ, is all great stuff. But just to get a little bit more practical, the question is, how do you know? If someone is suggesting that they are broken, I want to know what evidence they are using to reach that conclusion, right? And I would continue asking, how do you know, until they go into sensory-based language. So either I see this, or I hear this, or I feel this, right? And at that point, you have something to work with, right? So I feel, I don't know, inadequate in whatever context. Oh, how do you know? Oh, I just know. Yeah, but how do you know? Oh, I feel it. Okay, then you can go with, like, where do you feel it? How strong do you feel it? The location, is it pulsing? Is it sharp? Is it tingling? Is it, you know what I mean? You get into that, and then suddenly you're into a technique, right? Of change. So if it's like, oh, it just keeps coming back. Okay, when you notice it come back, how do you notice that it comes back, right? Because when they say it comes back, they're not in sensory-based language yet. When they say, how do you know that it comes back? Well, because I feel it, or because I think about it again. So you can also use think. You have VAKOG, the 5 senses, and then you can take think as like internal dialogue. There's like a 6th one, right? So when you and then there's another really, it's kind of magic, flies under the radar, this word about, right? When you ask someone to tell you about something, you're asking them to kind of zoom into detail on that one thing and give you more information. So it keeps coming back, and I keep thinking about it. So, okay, what about it do you keep thinking about? And then they might go into, oh, the consequences or how it ended up there or whatever. But you're just digging and digging until you get to one of those sensory words. I see this, I feel this, I hear that, whatever. And suddenly you have all kinds of stuff you can do as soon as you get into sensory-based language, because those are the building blocks that they are using. And and it's very easy to, like, say, for example, they say, oh, I see the way someone looks at me, and that's the evidence I'm using to support that I'm ugly or whatever, right? So, okay, when you see that, what are you not seeing that's happening at the same time? So you can stay within the visual sense, but spread the focus out to anything else that's not the thing that they're currently focused on, meaning you're doing like a foreground, background switch kind of thing, right? You push the thing that they're focused on to the background, bring everything else into the foreground, and say, well, what else do you notice in this scenario? Okay, or you can switch modalities altogether. So, oh, when I see them look at me this way, it makes me feel ugly or whatever. And you say, okay, while you were seeing that, what were you not hearing? Or what were you not feeling? Right? So you can take it completely out of visual and go into another one. So whichever strategy you decide to use, play around with them. Different people will respond to different approaches slightly differently. So I know I said differently like 3 times just then real quick. But the point is to change the way they are focusing their attention on the thing that they are currently focusing their attention on, to the extent that they can, even for a split second, feel or think differently from how they were. And as soon as you have that, it's like getting your foot in the door, and then you just kind of pry it open and wedge it open a little bit more, and the next thing you know, boom, change, right?
Cool. Who else says something? All right, we got 23 minis left. This is going good. Come on. Don't make me start pulling out quotes. Silence is deafening right now. Nobody? You can feel me looking at you, can't you? Pull out your notebook. Read the 5th question on the left side.
Damn. I need to stop telling people I have such a notebook. When you're like, if you were, I don't know if anybody has dabbled in creating their own recordings. Okay, great. I love the head nods. Awesome. How do you like to start them? Because I find that starting them, I'm somebody who I don't like this whole relaxation that goes on for like 10 or 15 minutes. It just takes way too much going on. Thank you, Elijah, for nodding. So how do you like to start them? Like, this moment, this meditation is for X. What are your thoughts?
For me, I kind of, first of all, I want to get out of my head. So I imagine I'm doing it for somebody else anyway. But then at the same time, now I think about it, when I'm doing it for somebody else, I imagine I'm doing it for me. So it's kind of a loop. Who knows where it starts? But usually I just start, okay, I just go straight to the breathing. And so I say, go ahead, get into a position where you're relaxed and ready to do this exercise or something to that effect. And then let's go ahead and let's take in 3 deep breaths. And then I'll tell you what, might be different things. Breathe in this, breathe out this, breathe in, concentration, breathe out toxicity, breathe in relaxation, breathe out any stress, and then I just go straight into whatever the induction is.
Awesome. Thank you. And also I'm going to add to my question. Anybody know where to find lengthy music? The royalty licensed one that is like 7-8 minutes that I can cut into a loop, because I hate these 30-second blips. Drives me nuts.
I mean, I have an Artlist subscription. I know that if you just search non-copyrighted music on YouTube, there are a lot of people who've put stuff out there. Whether it's a good match for you or not might be a whole different thing, and there are going to be varying links and everything. But there are definitely resources out there.
Good info. Who else is something?
Well, the recording's for yourself, right?
No. So they're going on my website, and yeah, so I'm doing that, and I've done a mix of them. Some are out there that are already on my YouTube, and expanding from there. And I don't want to pigeonhole myself only from knowing what I know. So I want to keep expanding that. So I'm trying to learn different things, and I know what I don't like. And on
What is
those
it you don't
affirmation
want?
loops, I know what I do like. So I'm trying to figure out consistency, that I can make something that's consistent, and then something else that's consistent in that area.
Consistent how so? Consistent with what?
Consistent with what? So if it's a specific topic, whether it's of which I do think a daily energetic clearing, a morning and an evening, and I want to pair it with the journal that I've created on Canva, so that way they have something else to keep binding to, and that way they have a consistent practice each day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you know what you don't want.
I know what I don't want.
Okay. So
I'm
if you
working
take
on it.
out the stuff that you don't want, what's left?
I want it to be about 15 minutes, somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes. So it could be part of like a magical morning practice of some sort, where they can do this for 10 minutes and journal for 10 minutes, and or whatever they want it to look like. And in creating it for myself, that's why I have a structure of what I'm wanting it to be consistent, because I've found that I need something to hold me accountable. I can't just like, oh, I'll just sit down. So
So you know what works for you.
I do know it works for me.
Have you tried making that?
Yes. And I just wanted other insight on what other people might find helpful. I know for me, I tend to, a lot of mine is freeze time, pause time, and safe space or safe color or grounding color, something that will anchor them down. So I like that Holly offered breathing as something else, as another alternative versus the ones that I keep using.
Okay. I think I finally understood the question. So I
Good
like
detective ninja work, Elijah.
I like expanding in space.
Okay.
Not immediately.
Okay.
You know, there's a fair bit of pacing and making sure people are adequately.
What does that mean to you, expanding in space?
It means what's the effect of it, or what does it mean?
What does it mean? What does it feel like to you when you say expanding in
Your
space?
attention goes outwards.
Okay. Attention goes out.
First in one direction, then in another direction, then in two directions at once, then in 360 degrees direction, and then 360 degrees direction at a long distance, right?
Awesome.
And the more you expand, the more you're forced to kind of shut off your critical thinking, because it's just too much information, because there's so much out there that the further you expand, you're not going to be able to keep up with it consciously. So you must go unconscious in order to process it, because conscious processing is sequential, whereas unconscious processing can be parallel.
Okay. Nice.
So that's why I like expanding outwards, because it almost forces you to go unconscious for those people who are still holding on.
Okay.
Right?
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
If you wanted an example of that, Dr. Joe Dispenza's got a really good meditation.
A new one out, Mo, did you say, or was it from his other ones?
We've had it up for a while, but he keeps updating it. But that's exactly
okay.
what it did with one of the courses. He
Awesome.
does that expansion. That I like to talk.
Awesome. I feel like I'm going to do like a mind, heart, gut one now.
Actually, why don't you incorporate all three?
Thanks, guys. Any other suggestions are completely welcome.
Of course. Ready?
Yeah.
Put together a list, whether it's names or whatever, avatars, clients, real, fictitious, alive or dead, whatever, of who you're doing the recording for.
Okay.
If you have past clients that you can think of that you want to make a specific, they don't have to know that you're doing it for them, but that takes you down to what is your objective? What are you trying? What is your target? As soon as you have that, the how and why and the words come in much easier. And if you want to have some fun with it, pick a random picture, Instagram, whatever, of a certain person, give them a situation, create a recording specifically for them that's unique to them. And you'll notice how it just flows out of you because you have everything inside of you for them.
Thank you.
Welcome.
How about if you were to do that, integrate that into your practice and offer that as one of your services for your clients, but not exclusively for them. So every time you do it for your client, you post that.
I do have that for people who sign up for a larger time frame with me. So I do have that, but I love that you pointed out to repurpose it. Awesome. Thank you.
That leaves us with 13 minis. So who's got one more topic for us to play with for the last 13 minis?
Well, if no one else is going to dive in, earlier we were talking about, just starting up conversations. And I know we've got 3 magic questions. We've got, state control, echo talk, and all that. But I'd just like to do a deep dive and say, are there any other suggestions for, 1, making the conversation go well, but 2, for also just kind of psyching yourself up for it and wanting to have that conversation versus dreading it?
Say something completely random and nonsensical. Did you know my great-grandfather built that back in 1709? Obviously, the math doesn't add up, right? They're going, what? It's almost like doing pattern interrupt. It's almost like opening with a pattern interrupt. Because when you have the interrupt, they don't know where to go. And so they're looking for a lead. And it's, I don't know, I find saying completely random, nonsensical stuff to be fun for me. And so I suppose that's why it works for me, because I'm having fun, right? And so I think whatever it is that's fun for you, that's what you got to focus on. Because if you're a little bit anxious about talking to someone, they're going to pick up those anxious vibes on the, what's the word I want? On the pre-conscious level, right? There's going to be a vibe. And because there's rapport, right? And even if, you haven't really engaged them fully yet. There's still going to be some rapport, and your nervousness is going to make them nervous, and then they're going to think that you make them nervous, or that they're nervous in situation. They're just going to want to get out of the situation. So first and foremost, whatever it is you're doing, be comfortable and have fun within yourself, because it liberates the other people around you to be comfortable and have fun within themselves. So it's a real easy way. Just do what you love, because that will break everybody's shields. I've never seen someone who's like happy doing something random that I didn't understand or even wasn't for me, but I see them enjoying themselves and I'm open to that person talking to me or talking more with them, just because I can see that they are, you know, in a good space, right? And the people who are a little bit more reserved, a little bit more, you know, I'm a bit wary of them because I don't want to disturb them. Maybe I'm a little bit too polite or whatever. And so I think, you know how they say like laughter is contagious? Like sometimes I watch, you know, like comedy shows or whatever, and when I see a comedian cracking up while telling their own joke, like they're genuinely laughing, it actually makes the audience laugh more. It makes me laugh more, because that's a genuine laugh, right? And it's contagious. And so I just think that as long as you're comfortable and having fun, it's the easiest way to get people to remove their shield. You can't see me, but I did the, you know, the quotes, their shields, right? Because you yourself have no shield. You know, you yourself have no shield. You're putting yourself out there, and then that kind of encourages them to put themselves out there as well, because you're equally vulnerable. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
Was it with somebody that you did know, as in dreading a conversation with somebody that you know, or was this just going up to somebody and striking up a conversation?
Just going up to somebody and striking up a conversation.
Okay. I think Elijah is a master at this because of his job. And if he's told me stories of, he'll just make like a little girl bust out laughing. And he's like, oh, you're not having a great day. Or he'll just go up to people. So especially when you're doing that, you're just going up to people to make it an art of a daily practice. And it can just be passing somebody in the grocery store, hey, your hair looks really great. And just doing it as quickly as that. You don't necessarily have to wait around if you're not comfortable for that response. It's just putting it out there, and you're putting good energy out there, and it's a lovely thing. And to ease into that. Or another great way is to go to the cashiers that actually have people and talk with them, because it's for a finite amount of time, and you know for sure that there will be an end, and you know for sure how a majority of that time frame is going to go. And just to even go in, if you go in with like the same joke, I think I've said how do you make a hanky dance about 342 times in my life, just to crack a smile. But those are the ways that I like to encourage people to ease into it. And that was the way that I started to ease into it, was doing it out in public. But I also really like that I heard on Instagram, preparing that space. Like if you're going to go out and do it, go out with the mindset of Marilyn when she was Marilyn and when she wasn't Norma Jean, and going out with that mindset of, I'm going to interact with people and I'm going to be fine and it's going to be okay. And even going to Kohl's or going to Target and walking around and just bumping into people. Oh yeah, that's a great choice. Those will look really good. And just make it very fun. Like Elijah had mentioned, those are great ways to start for sure.
Also know that it's a little bit of a numbers game in the beginning. Okay. The first 3 or 4 that you do in any given period of exercise, let's call it an exercise of approaching people and breaking the ice, right? The first 3 or 4 are just throwaways. You're actually expecting someone to give you a dodgy look or a funny kind of, hey, that person's a weirdo. And if you're prepared for that, because you know it's going to happen, because you know, like, oh, you know, I'm, you know, like if I go out with the intention of meeting a pretty stranger, you know, an attractive stranger, and you know, maybe something coming from that, the first dozen could be throwaways, right? It's just me warming up, right? I'm warming up. I'm getting used to the environment because I'm sensitive to new environments. I'm sensitive to large crowds, you know, and sometimes I might have to go somewhere once and do nothing just to be acclimatized to the environment, so that when I go back next week, okay, it doesn't bother me as much, and this time I might say something, right? So know that it's a progression, and that it's an ongoing thing, and that you will 100% get better. You know, practice, right, is what it is. And if you're having a good time, and if you have, here's the thing, remember, I keep coming back to this idea of unconditional love, right? If you take it from the same point of view as unconditional love, right, you expect nothing in return. When you love someone truly, you love them because you love them, and not because you want them to love you, right? It's unconditional. And so in the same way, the random things that I will say to strangers, I expect nothing in return. It's like you serve the ball 300 times in a day, right? And maybe on 15 occasions, someone hits it back, and suddenly you've got a game of back and forth going on, and you might have a little bit of a, you know, and most likely when those people hit the ball back and now we're conversing, it's me who decides that I'm actually, this is not the person I want to be talking to. So I just say, oh, thanks very much. Have a good time. It was nice meeting you. And that's it. It's done. It's over. And then you just go next. Right. So it's just remember that there is a numbers element to it as well. You got to get a decent, you know, you can't just talk to the next 3 people you talk to and it goes badly and you think, oh, I'm terrible in social situations, I can't break the ice. No, you got to do 300, 3,000, 30,000, right, to get an actual read on, you know, the kinds of responses that you get. I've said horrific things to people, horrific things to random people. You would not believe, like I should have been slapped or punched or whatever, right? I'd be walking down and I'd see a couple walking, and the girl was really cute, and I said, nice hat. And she looked at me, she went, oh, thanks. And I went, oh, actually, I was talking to him, but yeah, yours is all right too, you know? And then they thought I was gay, but they kept walking. But it doesn't matter, because it was a throwaway. It was me trying something, knowing that this person is not going to stop here. They're not going to, you know, I'm most likely never going to see them again, right? It's just a throwaway. And
I told you he had stories.
That lighthearted energy, right? It's got to be lighthearted. It's got to be happy-go-lucky, right? That's the way I see it. Nothing expected in return. I'm just throwing it out there. If it doesn't stick, it doesn't stick. If it doesn't come back, it doesn't come back. If they think I'm weird, good. Let them think I'm weird. It doesn't matter, you know. So that's kind of my attitude towards it.
And do it out of an energy of true curiosity.
Yes.
What do they have in common with me? What might they not have in common with me? It doesn't matter either way. And like I said many times with my questioning affirmations, how can I change someone's life for the better, even if I don't know about it? Sometimes all that is a smile. Sometimes all it is the eyebrow flash. Just go around and, you know, have fun with that, just seeing how many people you can get to do it back at you. Like, if that's the warm up for the game, then game on, have some fun with it. And, you know, strangers are just friends you haven't met yet. Think about you know, times where you're out where you are. I've seen you, and this I can make personal because I know you well enough. I've seen you out in areas where your social butterfly energy comes out. Whether you would want to admit it or not, whether you realize it or not, I've seen the Holly social butter. You have it in you. Give her a persona, give her a name, and go out and put her on stage and have fun with her. Because the more she gets on stage impromptu, the more you realize she's not this tiny little actress that sits off on the side of the stage and waits to get kicked out into. She does very well center stage.
I
So
feel like
there.
there was a collective aww.
Ah,
Thank you,
well,
everyone's very helpful.
and that brings us right up to the top of the hour. What a great finish. Number 63 in the books. I want to thank all of you so much for investing your time into showing up, being a part of this experiment that's gone on for 63 episodes now. Holy smokehouse, as Grandpa would say it. I've said it many times. I hesitated for almost 2 years to do this because I didn't know if I had enough stuff to talk about for 3 episodes. So thank you all. I will also, as always, thank you so much for giving up your time because I cannot, that's the one thing I can't give back to you. Wish I could. We'd all have a lot more time. I love you all and take care. Those of you watching the recording all the way through, love you. Those of you on YouTube watching live, love you. Remember to click the subscribe, ring the bell, all that, you know. Just appreciate the help. For those of you across the big pond and all that, man, I am so humbled, honored, blessed. Every one of you taking your time, showing up. Love you. Go out, be nice to each other, and I will hopefully see you in 7.
Good night.
Good night.
Great stuff.
Bye.